Good morning, y'all. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team. We're going to do our design shop talk again today to see what questions you might have to get them answered. If you have any questions while we're live on both Facebook and YouTube. Type them in the comments. Don't send them privately. I don't see those while we're live. I'm here by myself. So please type them in on the comments, and if you see me looking off to the side, I've got a second monitor over there where I can kind of monitor the different platforms to see what questions come in to get those answered for you while we're here, or at least try to. All right, so I'll start off with the questions that were sent in ahead of time, and we will go from there. So let me just make sure. It looks like both platforms are up. So, all right. So let's see, what did we start with? So this one is asking about print setup. So they're wanting to be able to print their designs actual size so that they can cut them out and use them as templates for placements and whatnot. So let's take a look at that. So if I go to Design Shop, I'm going to go open up a design. I'm going to go to my C drive, designs, and I'm going to open up my one-day thing. Jolene and Lorena, welcome. If you have a question on C&D, type them in. I will see if I can help. And Lorena, 39 degrees. You're in a nice heat wave there. I was just talking to Colorado, and I think they were saying it's 16. Ooh, it's 81 here. Anyway. So let's look at our print settings. So when we go into print, of course, you go File, Print. Click on the print icon as another one, and it will bring up the print thingy here. Right here is where the actual size is selected. So when you deselect that, notice the multiple pages go away and it's just one page. If I turn on actual size, it'll bring up a second page, which happens to be over here. That gives me the actual size design. So it's as simple as that. You just click on actual size. It'll show up on a second page, not on that same page. It's an additional page, and you'll have that there. There was another question that I did not get put into my little slides, but that came in this morning that said something to the effect of, I have a design, it should fit on one page, but when I go to print it, it's printing it across multiple pages. So depending on the design, let's say you've got a design that's 10 wide and 3 tall or something like that. Well, this is set up as portrait, so 8.5 by 11. All right, so when you go into the longer design, it's going to split it up across multiple pages. So under page setup, you can come over here and change your orientation to landscape, and that'll change it from being 8.5 by 11 to 11 by 8.5 tall. So you'll have that. And of course I don't want to print. Sorry. There is also, you can do letter or A4 depending on which paper you're using. Jolene, the C&D, a one color logo, but it kept changing it to 8. I don't know a whole lot about the C&D format because it's an old format. Is there any reason you want to use C&D versus using an EXP or OFM or DST? Because I know the C&D is it's a much older format. And so if you can also another thing on that, if you can send over the file to applications@melco.com, I can also take a look at it, or one of the guys can, see if there's something there that's a setting or whatnot. All right. So let's see. Let me know on that, Jolene. All right, so printing. And Adam, welcome on YouTube. Thanks for joining today. So we talked about the printing. Is there a way to print out all the fancy stitches? I've been searching for a double diamond single line stitch. So the fancy stitches, if you go into Design Shop, down here, you'll see the Select Automatic Custom In Shape tool. That brings up this little box that I have down there. So if I turn that off, that brings it up. So from there, I can go look at the decorative stitches directly. These are all the different decorative stitches that are currently here. So if you create new ones, you can add them. If you want to use any of these, it'll show them to you so that when you go select your decoratives, so let's say I want to use that 7-point star. I can say walk type decorative, come down here to my 7-point star, and now when I go to draw it, there's a 7-point star across there. Okay. So you can see them all down here, including ones that you create. So let's see, is my horse here? No. Oh yeah, my horse is here. So that's a horse. That's one I generated, and there's some others. Okay, so you have that where you can see all of the different ones. Okay. But oops, go away. I'm not aware of one where you can actually print those. What is Design to Stitch used for? Where's Design to Stitch? Is that one of the auto features? Design to Stitch. I don't know what that is. Oh, load design? Where is the Design to Stitch that you're asking about? That phrase I'm not familiar with. Or maybe I am and I just call it something else, which might actually be the case. Next to the slow redraw. Okay, so slow redraw, step back, draw to stitch. Oh, all right. So when you go to redraw, here's what it's used for. Okay, so stop that. So I'm going to make it fit on my screen. If I turn that off, when it's good, when I do my slow redraw of the design, nothing shows up. Okay, so it, excuse me, it's really just going to redraw it as it goes. Now, if I turn on that draw to stitch feature and turn it off of 3D and hit play, or turn it on 3D, you see that it shows the final design grayed out, and it will show you as it goes what it's doing. So that's all that feature is doing. Okay, so it's literally just graying out everything before it goes to redraw it. So it's just a visualization to see how things are going to sew out before you actually go to the machine. Okay, does that help? All right, let's see what other questions do we have. Can you go over the auto sequence with as well as good times to use it? So the auto sequence feature is interesting. I'll say personally when I use it is when I've got a whole bunch of things that are touching. So let's say I'm doing borders and I'm outlining a bunch of stuff, right? So if all my borders are all touching, it's all one color, like this, all these bean stitches around the one day. So all that black stuff is touching. So if I digitize it all, I can then tell it to auto sequence and it'll create travel stitches and other things as necessary. But keep in mind when you're using the auto sequence, I'll show you where it is in a minute for those who aren't familiar with the tool. It's going to resequence things as it sees fit to optimize, you know, how the travels, right? So when it resequences, it doesn't know that this is supposed to be on top, this is supposed to be on bottom. So it may end up kind of reordering a design in a manner that you might not care for. Okay, so I'll say personally, I'll always try it and go, yeah, I like it, move along, because it's quick and easy, so why not? If I try it and it resequences things so that things that are supposed to be on top are now under bottom and it's just not looking artistically how I want, then I'll undo it and go do it myself. So where you'll find that is if you select whatever it is you want to sequence, if you hold this thing down, the green control, so right here where it's start stop, you'll see there's one that says auto sequence. All right, so when you do that, you can tell it to auto generate and it's going to rearrange everything into the order it thinks is optimal for sewing it. Okay, and you know, then you can redraw it, take a look at it, and it'll go through however it is. So it'll actually resequence it how it thinks it needs to go. You'll decide whether you like it or not. It'll add travel stitches, things like that. So it's a really neat tool. I usually, like I said, personally, when I'm digitizing, anything that is, like I've got a whole bunch of top stitching elements, they're all the same color, they're all same touching, I'll select that color, tell it to auto sequence, check it out, see if I like it. If I like it, I move along. If not, I undo it and go do something else, digitize it myself. So the hotkeys, on Stream Decks, from what I understand, it just works based on the settings for the particular deck you're using. So I know the guys tend to use the keyboards that have the F keys, you know, the programmable keys on it. So I think it has to do with settings on your Stream Deck itself to be able to program it and go through programming it. Not knowing which one, and if it's one the guys have tried before, but they all use the, I believe they were telling me the Logitech keyboards that have the built-in panels that you can program, and they use those, and it works automatically. They said they program it, they have no issues with it. So I'm not 100% sure what difference it would be between the one you're trying to use. So I'm not sure. I would need to know more about which one you're using so I can pass it off to them, the guys who actually use them. Let's see. Someone asked on YouTube, when using autoconvert feature, I notice it creates a ton of nodes and stitch directions. Is there a way to delete all the stitch directions quickly so that I may enter my own manually? There is under, let's see, Accelerator Editor. I always forget the keys that Scott set up. So on the Accelerator Editor, there is a video, and on the Melco service site, there's some suggested settings and accelerator things that Scott tends to use. On there, there's one that deletes all those stitch directions. Let's see, insert stitch direction, insert splice. I always have to look for them. Delete. I'm going to look foolish while I sit here and scroll through it, so I'm going to apologize. It's in here somewhere, and of course I'm scrolling too fast to be able to find it quickly for you. I can show you a really silly way to do it. Here, I'll show you a silly way to do it because I know it works. So if you do an autoconvert and it creates a whole bunch of stitch directions and you don't want them, okay? They just got the link for us typed in. So over here, hotkeys. Where'd it go? Open. So over here, let's see, insert clear stitch direction lines. So that's the code. That's what I need to actually look for. So under the Accelerator Editor, go to A, B, C, clear splice lines, clear direction line. It's already set to F6. So if you do a convert and the stitch direction lines are not what you want, you can select the element and then click F6 and it will get rid of it for you. So, but yeah, the other way is to convert it back to vector and then add stitch direction lines, which is kind of backwards. But what I would suggest is, you know, if you've got a whole bunch of stitch direction lines, let's add another one so I can show you. That's not a whole bunch, but you select it, click F6, it will get rid of them, and now you can add which ones you want. Okay, so sorry you got to watch me scroll around looking for the command. But yeah, that's the way you would do it, is click F6, select the element, click F6, then you can add your own. Whatever it is you want, and anytime you want to get rid of it, F6, go again. Okay. Adam, I don't know, because everyone I talked to hasn't had any issues getting their Stream Decks to work. So if you have which one you're using, if you can send it over, maybe I can have them look at that specifically. I don't know. I'm sorry. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? Nothing typed in. Okay. So back to my questions. So this one was talking about the partitions. So, you know, what do these partitions, when you go into a fill, down here they have the settings for the fill where you've got standard, random, you've got partitions and an angle. All right. So this, if you're familiar with bricklaying or tile, that sort of thing, it makes a little bit more sense. So if you start, basically how many rows you're going to start switching things over, and how many sequences you have between there. So if you have a partition of 4, and it's easiest to see with the angle at 90, because otherwise when you're going on different angles, it gets more complex because everything's kind of skewed over at different angles. But literally a partition of 4 means, you know, between the repeating pattern, you're going to have 4 different segments in here. And for each one, what is the next row doing? So is it all in the same spot? Is it moving over 1? Is it going to, you know, the next row? We start at 0, the next row is going to move over 1. The next row is going to move over 2. So it's going to line up with 2, 3, etc. Okay, so if you go look in DesignShop, so let's draw a box. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to draw a quick box. And let's go into the properties. I'm going to set it to 90 so it's easiest to see. And let's do one really easy so that you can just look at it. So if I set 8 partitions, that means the repeating pattern is going to be on 8 rows. And I'm going to set it to 0, 0, 0, 0, 4, 4, 4, 4. Apply. That gives you this basket weave looking thing, right? So, yeah. So you get a basket weave pattern by doing that. The other one that you can look at to just kind of quickly understand it be 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, I think. Is that 4? Nope, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Maybe? Yeah, there it is. There's the zigzag. Okay. So you can use those to kind of look through them and see them. What particular ones I like using this one a lot. I go to 6 and do 501, 501. It's an auto split. I love it. Particularly when you're splitting different elements. Let's say you're doing lettering and you want to kind of have that split going down the middle because it's too wide for a satin. So, but the fill, you don't want it to be, you still want to kind of make it look similar to a satin. So I tend to use the 6, 501, 501. It, you know, auto split's another one that works pretty decently. But all these different presets, if you look at them, their patterns all change. So you can see how the partitions work and kind of see the different patterns that are being created. Okay, so that is what the partitions are. Like I said, the ones I like the most are auto split or using a partition of 6 with 501, 501. Like, I've been using that a lot, particularly on lettering. All right, we did get you the links to the accelerator editor that I put up there, the Elgato Stream Deck. Okay, I'll see if someone can take a look at that. I'm unfamiliar with it, so I apologize again. Like I said, I did talk to the other ones, and they, like I said, they use the Logitech ones and seem to have good luck with them. So, all right, let's see, what else do we have? Favorite one, 6, 501, 501. All right, how can I digitize things like this? Okay, so if you look at what this is, it's actually a bunch of different elements with curved stitch directions. All right, so you can see kind of the curve going along here. Those are different stitch directions for fills with a wide density to create that. All right, so let's go look at it. So I had one I had started years ago now, so I just brought that one up so I could show it to you. Okay, so when creating these sorts of things, how do we do them, right? So I've got this. It's basically you're going to create your different fills and play with your stitch directions to get them to do what you want. So if I just copy and paste this one over so you can look at it, you can see what this is. It's just a fill, so let's recreate it. I'll trace it, just have something to trace. So if I trace that, left click, right click, left, and I'm going to hit enter to close the shape. I have no holes, so I hit enter again. I'm going to give it a start point and a stop point. Now here's the fun part, is the stitch direction. So I've got straight stitch directions, which is not going to give me the look I want, right? So if I take this and let's change the density to something bigger. Okay, all right, that's not exactly that nice kind of flowy look, right? So how do I get that to be different? Well, we can use our trick we just did before, hit F6 to clear the stitch directions. And right here I can say insert curved direction line. So to get to that, I held that down, went over to the second one over, curved direction line, and now, helps if I select it, huh? I can left click, right click to get curve, left click again, and you can start playing with this to curve your stitches around. See that? To get different looks and make the stitches curve. And again, you can add multiple ones. So let's say I want to do that down here. All right, so you can see you can twist the stitches a little bit weird. You can add more, and every time it gets to one of those new stitch directions, it's going to kind of force the stitches to match up with the line you drew. All right, now the other thing you'll notice between these two, you see how the edges are kind of pointy here versus straight here? What's the difference? That's going to be a setting under your properties. So if I go into properties here, first off, let's turn off the center walk, because with these sorts of designs, we don't want that. The other is right here, you'll see there's a trapunto setting. What that's going to do is rather than when it, jumping to the next row without going to the edge of the wireframe, trapunto is going to force a needle penetration right on the edge of the wireframe. So it kind of squares up those edges rather than having that kind of triangle look going. Okay, and you can also set it under your top stitching to do a trace border, and it will outline it for you. All right, so it's then just down to what look are you going for. You can change your densities, you can change your stitch directions, add them, take them away, until you get it to look like something that looks pretty to you. All right, so then what do you do with all these? It's just a matter of drawing the different elements and stacking them up and changing your stitch directions. So you can see this first one, we curved that way. The second one, it's curved here, and that kind of gives you that flowy look to it. All right, this one has crazy stitch direction to make it look like a ribbon. Now, the edges, so on that design you had, it had a look similar to one of these, right? So we can do satin stitches along the edges. So this is just a single line center. Or let's say we want to come down here and, do a thinner, more delicate look, right? Well, again, I can trace it with, and I would trace it better, but let's move that. So I'm going to change this to bean stitch. And so we can do a bean stitch, which is just going to do a forward, back, forward, forward, back, forward. So it's a thicker line. And you can give it a different color. Maybe that's a look you like. Or instead of a bean stitch, so let's say we make that a bean stitch in a darker color, maybe that's the look you want. Or let's say we don't want a bean, we want to do a decorative stitch. And we can go to maybe, where is it? Stem stitch. Maybe we like that. All right, so this is just when it goes to stitch, it's a little bit more bold. It has a stitch slightly sideways along there. So it kind of is a little bit thicker than the bean stitch. So maybe that's the look you want. You can also do things, create your own decoratives. You can do these. The bean's kind of fun. So where's the bead? You can do a bead, and let's say that bead's too big for you. Okay. Well, we can come in here and play with our settings. Let's make it narrower. So that's cute. Maybe we want to space it out a little bit. Okay. So there's a lot of things we can play with to kind of give different looks along the edges, depending on, again, what do you want it to look like? What's your little artistic style there? All right. Let's see. Am I missing any? So that's all there is to it. Like here, let's draw that one just to, so if I draw it, left click, right click, around, and I'm doing these as complex fills. All right, and I have no hole. I'm gonna give it a start point and a stop point. I'm gonna hold this down, go to my insert curve stitch direction line, and give it a stitch direction line. You can see if I want it to be just a curved fill, that's fun, but I want it to be more spread out so it's more airy. So that's then coming down into the direction, and then now I just go get rid of my underlay because we don't need that for this particular one. Okay, so it's just a matter of setting your properties to clean it up how you want it to look. All right, let's see. We have a question typed in. When I use Madeira's white thread, the 1801, I don't get full coverage unless I use 2 fill underlays with a density of 15%, so the fabric would show through. I don't quite understand that. So when using white, when I use fills, let me back up a different way. Typically when I'm doing fills, I want to make sure the fabric is covered. Remember your needles are, 3.7, I think. I forget the size for the 7511. But I'll tell you what I typically do is I'll set the density to around 3.7. It's a personal preference. And then for my underlay, I'll just set it to auto. And I've never seen any very few issues using a regular 40 weight thread and doing that. Just decreasing your density a little bit. What does that decreasing the density do? That's going to make from row to row. If I go back to my original picture of my partitions, just because it's easy to look at there, the density is going to be the distance from this row to the next row. So if you're seeing fabric between there, you're not getting as full of a covering that you want. It could be that your density is too large. So decreasing your density is going to take this row and move it closer to that one for you. All right, so it's going to add stitches, bring them closer together so that you're now covering up more. And then making sure you have a good underlay is going to make sure that those stitches aren't sinking into your fabric. It's got thread to rest upon. Okay, so using a fill underlay is typically a good way to do that. Density of 15%. That one is the one that makes me scratch my head. So that's how I personally get coverage, is I'll go through and make the density around 3.7 to 3.8 with the auto underlay. And it usually does great for the 40 weight thread. All right. What other questions do we have? Quick look on the platforms and then there. Okay. So we talked about curved stitch directions. Oh, this one here. So see how they're coming into a single point? How is that done? Well, not quite a single point, but so let's draw kind of a triangle-y shape. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So there we go. All right, so I've got this shape. I don't have any holes. I want it to start over here, end over here. Now stitch directions. Well, I can put one stitch direction in, and again, change this closer to 30, but I want them all coming this way. So what do I need to do? I can add a second stitch direction this way. You can see it brings them where they're all coming more together. So that's how you would get that sort of look. And again, I would personally get rid of the underlay and set it to trapunto so the stitches go, oops, not that. So they go to the end. Okay. Underlay density is set to 15%. So underlay is a percentage based? I've never used underlay for percent. Yeah, there is no underlay in percent, like not that I'm aware of. And the underlay density is set at, the densities are set as points, not as percents. So it's really what density you have here is what the coverage is going to be. There's no percentage. Percent is what something you'd see on pole compensation. So I'm not 100% sure there. All right, yeah, because pole compensation is the only place I'm aware of that has percent-based anything, which that's not going to affect how much coverage you have. All right, let's see. Any other questions? All right, we did that. When's the next update coming out? I'm not really sure. I know that they're always working on improving their product, and they're always doing continual updates and looking for release candidates and things like that. They're always beta testing things. So there's work is always in progress. I don't know when the next one is scheduled, but I do know they're always working on it, and they're always working on betas and, you know, always working on improvements. It's a continual process. Okay. What other things do we have? Yeah, auto density is a percentage, but again, that's the top. So someone's pointing out percentage-wise. So percentage can be in your pull compensation. So right here for pull comp. Under top stitching, if you turn on auto density, the density itself is being driven by what's under here. So if you're curious what that is, these are the numbers being set based on how large an element is. All right. So this percentage is just going to shift this table up and down, depending on what you tell it to do. If you're going to get 120% or 90% of the density. So density is can be percent based when you're using auto. Without that, it's just number. I'm trying to think anywhere else there would be percentages. Under effects, but again, that doesn't have anything to do with coverage. You can do percentages based on, how random do you want an edge to be. Yeah, I can't think of anywhere else that uses percent. Pull comp, effects. Well, there's these stitch parameters, but again, that's not going to affect coverage. The only thing that really affects coverage is going to be your density and your underlay. How do you, oh, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I do that fast. Okay, so the question is, how do we get to this box? All right. So on YouTube, a follow-up on this percentage thing is the underlay density is set at 15 points. What I would suggest doing is if you haven't used this enable auto underlay, try that. It works, I find, really well to the point where I almost use it all the time now. And I used to be very anti auto underlay. The new updates, particularly in 11, I love them. They work so well because what it does is if you really want to know what auto underlay is, if you click on this guy right here, it'll bring up a box and it shows you what the underlay is doing. So it shows you for small elements, it does a center walk. When you get a little bit bigger, it does an edge walk. When you get a little bit bigger, but not huge, it's doing a zigzag and an edge walk. And when you get bigger than 90 points, so you're getting into those larger fill areas, these are the settings it does. It does, like I said, I love it. It works really well. You end up getting nice, I find it does really nice coverage. It holds things really well. So the question of how am I getting to that property box is there's a bunch of ways you can do it. You can right click and go to properties. So you select an element first and then right click, go to properties. It'll bring this up. And then you have all these different properties that you can go through. How do I open properties window? Yeah, you double click on it. You can either double click on it, right click, go to properties. If you're deselecting something, you can still get to it, but you would do it over here. Right click on any of these and it'll bring up the property box as well, just not associated with a particular object. The property box does change depending on what you are selected in. So you can see here is top stitching because I'm on a fill. If I have lettering, there'll be another tab on there for lettering, things like that. Okay, trying to think what other ones. But yeah, it's just a matter of right click and go to properties. What other questions do we have? Because I don't have any more typed in. So Alberta, did that get you what you were looking for? You just select on it and then over here you have your different tabs. If you have multiple, I showed this last week, I'll show it again now. Of course, I don't have multiple types selected. Let me select a multiple type. So I'm holding my control key. So now I've got 3 things selected. So what if I only want to change the properties of this single line? Well, I can come over here under this drop down, say single line, and now I have access to the single line properties and it'll update just those. Okay, so you've got that. If I want to go to change my fill properties, I can change it to fill, and now I have access to all the fill properties, and I can click through my settings and adjust them that way. So Mr. 209, with our density and your white coverage, did that help any? Like I said, I would personally suggest trying, a density of 3.5 should be fine. Making sure your active feed's not too tight. That's another thing, just practically speaking on your machine. If your active feed's too low, it might be pulling it too tight into the fabric. So that might be another thing to consider, is upping your active feed just a little bit. Okay. Any other questions before we... Adam, with your Elgato Stream Deck, I'll look it up personally, and I'll also ask the guys if they have one that they can go play with. I don't know. I'm in Florida, they're in Colorado, so, but I'll send a note out to all of them and see what we have. I need the embroidery detail breakdown of embroidered file. Oh, you're talking about the, okay. So you're wanting to know, how do I get to this guy right here? Okay, so this is called the project view. So if I close that, how do I get it back? Okay, so if I go view, a lot of people think it's a toolbar. So they'll come over to toolbars and go, well, my toolbars are all here. Where'd it go? It's not a toolbar, it's the project view. So if you go view, project view, and click on project view, it'll bring this box back. Okay, and then now you can see all the details of what colors I have, all the different elements that form the design and things like that. So it's the project view. And then keep in mind, there's all these other wonderful tabs down here that you can always play with. Okay. All right, can you show us again, how do we make that? How do I make my little horse design? Okay, so because I'm lazy, I'm going to bring it on the, I originally drew it. It took me forever to draw something that looked decent. So I'm going to bring it on my screen so I have something to trace. So the key to doing these sorts of decoratives and creating your own is there's a few things. One, you got to start and stop on the same line, right? So the easiest way to do that is to make sure, you can see here I'm not lined up at all, that you're starting and stopping your stitching right on this red line. If you don't, things are going to drift. They're not going to line up, right? So whether you get whatever art you're going to do, find your art, sketch it out, take a picture of it. That's how, when I'm doing my, quilt designs, I'll actually doodle on paper, take a picture of it and bring it on the screen and then just trace it and clean it up in DesignShop. But you start where you want, and you're going to trace your design. And you can see I'm going fast and not paying much attention, but you get the idea. All right, so you'll trace whatever design it is you have, whether it's something like this, my little horsey, or if you're going to, I'm going to skip half the horse, so we're just going to go down to the leg. So you get the idea. All right, so you'll draw whatever it is you want to be a repeating pattern. And here's the key. You want to make sure you start and stop right on that same line, okay? To the point of you really want to zoom in and make sure that those are exactly on your start and stop. Okay, right on that red line. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. So once you have whatever design you want, which I have a horse leg and some loops, you would then come over here to select the shape, right click, save custom shape, and we're going to save as a decorative, and you'll see me do this a lot. I always overwrite one file until I'm happy with it, so I keep on calling it test until I get a design I like, and then I save it with its final name. That just stops me from junking up my decorative list. So then I go and test it. Do I like it? Do I need to make changes? So I go find the one I just created, create my little decorative, and we've got some ugly dancing loops and legs. There we go. Okay, so then you test it out, see if it does what you want, and you're good to go. All right. TI to the next. All right. So we have another question typed in. So does that help with the decoratives? Sorry, I was reading a question. I kind of zoned out there. How do I navigate the stitch list? So the stitch list is here. So TI. I forget what TI stands for. Let's see. Tie-in stitch, that's what it is. Tie-in and tie-out, T-I-T-I. Okay, so what you can do is Control F, and when you're in the stitch list, you can say, all right, go to the next trim. Next, oh, of course it found them all. I got a design that doesn't have many. You can go through here and tell it you want to go to the next jump stitch, the next walk, the next whatever. So Control F will take you through the design that way. Okay, so if I've got a bunch of things, I would just do Control F, whatever you want to look for next, and it'll take you to that next element. So that's how I use it. I typically use the stitch list right here predominantly for deleting jump stitches that I don't like in expanded files. I hate the little dash lines. They really don't do anything. I just don't like them. So I spend an obscene amount of time deleting them out of files just because I don't like seeing dashes on my screen. It's kind of juvenile, but yeah, there you have it. All right. Let's see. What else? But yeah, that's what you would do. So to navigate through your stitch list, select your stitch list, click on your keyboard, Control F, and then scroll through here with what you're trying to look through. Go to the next, find the next one of, and it will take you there. All right. Yeah. Okay, one other thing I did want to point out, if you're setting up a continuous, the question on setting this up for a continuous design, what you do want to make sure as well is when you're setting them up, there is a video we recorded a few years ago that it was a ribbon with a holly design on it. It was around Christmas time. It was for continuous embroidery. It shows the same technique that I'm showing of how to actually do the laser alignment. But if you're setting this up to be continuous design, where you're going to hoop a quilt and keep on moving it around, what you'll want to do is make sure your design starts directly at the crosshairs. That way, when you chalk out a line on your quilt to go line up to the next one, you would do laser left, laser right, laser bullseye. It will slam the design all the way to the left. That way, what you would do is, let's just pretend this is the physical product. I do my alignment, laser left. Now, all I have to do to make sure it starts exactly where I want to continue to the design is I need to just make sure my needle drops down on where the last one ended, and then it will continue along. So by using your laser alignment, you'll make sure it's nice and straight, and then you justify it to one side so that you can then line it up directly to there and then tell it to go. So it'll continue your design for you. So there was a follow-on question to my little horsey, which was, can you use these designs for fills? Yeah, I love them, by the way, for like a trapunto look. So let's zoom out some. I'm going to draw a box. So I've got a box, but I want to take that decorative and make it a fill. So what do? Well, rather than being the traditional fill, I'm going to call it a decorative fill. And then I'm going to go change it to that test one that I just did. And then you can play with it by moving these boxes around to get it to nest right. So if I want to change this to my little horse, that is actually drawn correct. You know, you can make them nest differently, move them around, however you want it to look to create that fill. Okay, so yeah, you absolutely can. You basically create whatever pattern you want, save it as a decorative, and then you can apply it to a decorative fill or as a decorative line. Lorena is asking, do I know what digitizers digitize in native OFM? I'm not quite sure how to answer that because I know of a bunch, but I'm not given that I'm here on Melko's channel rather than my personal. Let me see if we can get a list. I'll ask the guys if they have a list. Actually, why don't we just go look? Now that, where is it? Hotkeys. So let's go to the Melko service site. Because now, OFM digitizers. Helps if I can spell, huh? Let's see. Third-party digitizing companies. Hey, look at that. So I know Q Digitizing does some of it. There's other non-designs I know for a fact does OFM. The rest of these I don't have the other ones that I know of aren't on this list. So let me ask the guys if they're going to add others. But those two I know do it. Q and non-designs I know for a fact does them. Actually, that's what they specialize in, is OFM designs. So, okay. Yeah, but I know of at least 4 other shops or digitizers that I don't see on this list, so I'll have to ask. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any. All right, so next week I'll be back. I'm going to aim for Thursday, unless my kids decide to derail my plans. But I'm going to aim for Thursday, and we will be back to see what questions we have. Again, you can email them ahead of time at applications. Adam, I will ask about that Elgato Stream Deck for you. Like I said, I don't have one, so I'm kind of useless on that front. So I apologize. Yeah, send in what questions you have, and I hope these are helpful. I hope you enjoy them. We will be back next week, see what questions we can kind of go over and what we can learn. Until then, you guys have a blast sewing, and I will talk to you next week.